Single Dad was tricked into Christmas blind date, but what she said left him in tears. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. Marcus Walsh walked into Lakeside Cafe on December 20th, thinking he was meeting someone about his late wife's memorial scholarship fund. But the second he saw the woman in scrubs sitting in the corner booth, the second she looked up and said 5 words that stopped his heart, "Amanda wanted me to find you," he realized he'd been completely set up, and what she told him next would leave him crying in front of a room full of strangers on a Friday night 3 days before Christmas. To understand why those words hit him like a freight train, you need to know what his morning looked like. And honestly, it looked like every morning for the past 2 years. Wake up at 5:30, get his daughter Iris ready for school while she barely said 3 words, then drive to whatever job site Walsh & Sons Construction was working that week. This particular Friday, he was at a residential renovation in the Chicago suburbs, tearing out a kitchen that hadn't been updated since 1985, and his crew was already there when he pulled up in his truck at 6:45. "Morning, boss," his lead guy Danny called out, and Marcus nodded and grabbed his tool belt and got to work, because working meant not thinking, and not thinking meant not feeling, and that's how he'd survived for 730 days since Amanda passed. His phone rang around noon, while he was sitting in his truck eating a sandwich that tasted like cardboard, and his best friend Rachel's name popped up on the screen. And he almost didn't answer because Rachel had been on him for months about getting back out there, and he wasn't interested. "Hey, Rach, what's up?" Marcus said with his mouth half full, and Rachel's voice came through way too cheerful for a Friday afternoon. "Remember how Amanda always talked about starting that scholarship fund for underprivileged kids who wanted to go to college?" And Marcus felt his chest get tight because, yeah, he remembered. They talked about it in the hospice bed 2 weeks before she passed, her hand in his while she made him promise he'd do something good with her memory. "Of course I remember," Marcus said, and his voice came out rougher than he meant it to, and Rachel kept going, like she had this all planned out. "Well, I found someone who wants to help make it happen, big donor, but she wants to meet you first." Get a feel for what Amanda's vision was. Marcus wiped sawdust off his jeans and said, "I don't know, Rachel. It's almost Christmas. Iris has her school thing next week. I've got 3 projects wrapping up." And he was listing excuses because the idea of talking about Amanda with a stranger made him want to put his fist through the truck window. Rachel's voice got softer, more persuasive. "It's just coffee, Marcus. 1 hour. Amanda would want this. You know she would." And the guilt card worked like it always did because Rachel was right. Amanda would want the scholarship fund. She'd want her name to mean something beyond a headstone. "Fine, when and where?" Marcus said, and Rachel gave him the details. 7 p.m. tonight at Lakeside Cafe. Her name's Natalie. And Marcus hung up thinking this was just another obligation to check off his list. What Marcus didn't know was that Rachel had made another phone call that same afternoon, this one to Natalie Chen, who was finishing up a 12-hour shift at the hospice care facility where she worked as a nurse. Natalie was sitting in her car in the parking lot completely exhausted when her phone rang, and Rachel's voice came through saying, "Hey, Nat, remember you said we should grab coffee and catch up?" And Natalie rubbed her eyes thinking she barely remembered having that conversation. "Yes, sure, when were you thinking?" Natalie asked while pulling off her scrubs in the front seat because she kept a change of clothes in her car for exactly this reason. And Rachel said, "Actually, there's someone I want you to meet, Amanda Walsh's husband, Marcus. He's been struggling, and I thought maybe talking to someone who was there at the end might help him." Natalie's whole body went tense because she remembered Amanda Walsh, remembered those 6 weeks she'd spent at their house being her primary hospice nurse, remembered the promise Amanda had made her swear to keep. "Rachel, I don't know if that's appropriate. I was his wife's nurse. There are boundaries." And Natalie was already coming up with reasons to say no because she'd been carrying Amanda's message for 2 years and wasn't sure she was ready to deliver it. Rachel pushed back. "It's been 2 years. He has questions about her final days he won't ask family. Just coffee as a favor to me?" And Natalie felt the weight of that promise she'd made sitting heavy in her chest. "Okay, fine. But just as a friend helping him process, nothing else." And Rachel said, "Of course, tonight at 7, Lakeside Cafe." And Natalie hung up thinking this was going to be the hardest coffee meeting of her entire life. Marcus got to the cafe first at 6:55 because being early was built into his DNA from years of running construction jobs, and he scanned the room looking for someone who seemed like a big donor type. He spotted a woman in the corner booth wearing hospital scrubs and figured maybe she was a doctor with money. Walked over and said, "Natalie, I'm Marcus Walsh," and stuck out his hand. The woman looked up and her face did this thing where recognition hit her like a slap. And Marcus didn't recognize her at all because 2 years ago, when she'd been in his house taking care of Amanda, he'd barely been functional enough to remember his own name. "Marcus, yes, hi, please sit down," Natalie said, and her voice was shaking just slightly, and Marcus slid into the booth across from her, thinking she seemed nervous for a donor meeting. They did the awkward small talk thing for about 30 seconds before Marcus said, "So Rachel mentioned you're interested in Amanda's scholarship fund." And Natalie's face shifted to confusion. "Scholarship fund? She told me you had questions about Amanda's final days, that you needed to talk to someone who was there." And Marcus felt his stomach drop straight through the floor. "Wait, what? You knew Amanda?" And Natalie nodded slowly. "I was her hospice nurse. I was with her for the last 6 weeks." And Marcus stood up so fast his chair scraped loud against the tile floor, and every head in the cafe turned to look at them. "Rachel set this up?" Marcus's voice came out way too loud and he didn't care. "This isn't about a donation. This is what? A blind date disguised as a business meeting?" And he was grabbing his jacket off the back of the chair, feeling betrayed and furious, and like the walls were closing in. Natalie stood too. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. If I'd known, I never would have agreed to this." And she looked genuinely upset, which made Marcus feel slightly less angry, but still desperate to get out of there. "It's not your fault. Rachel had no right. I'm sorry you got pulled into whatever this is." And he was heading for the door, weaving between tables, just needed air and space and to be literally anywhere else. "Marcus, wait!" Natalie's voice cut through the ambient noise of the cafe. "Amanda wanted me to find you." And Marcus stopped dead with his hand on the door handle. His back still turned because if he looked at her, he might actually break down right there. "What are you talking about?" he said without turning around, and Natalie's voice was shaking but determined. "Before she passed, she made me promise something. She said 2 years from now, Christmas week, find Marcus and tell him something for me. She knew you'd shut down, she knew you'd stop living, and she wanted me to deliver a message." Marcus turned around slowly and the entire cafe had gone quiet. Everyone watching this scene unfold like it was dinner theater, and his eyes were already burning with tears he refused to let fall. "She planned this? 2 years ago?" And Natalie nodded, her own eyes wet. "She loved you so much, Marcus. She wanted to make sure you'd be okay. Please sit back down and let me tell you what she said. I've been carrying her words for 2 years. Marcus walked back to that corner booth on legs that didn't feel entirely solid, and the whole cafe was still watching them like this was the most interesting thing that had happened all week, and he slid into the seat across from Natalie without saying a word because his throat was too tight to form sentences. Natalie reached into her purse with hands that were shaking and pulled out a sealed envelope that looked worn from being carried around for way too long. And Marcus saw his name written in Amanda's handwriting across the front and felt like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed. "She gave me this the night before she passed," Natalie said quietly. "Made me promise not to open it, just to give it to you exactly 2 years later during Christmas week. And I've been carrying it in my bag every single day, waiting for the right moment." Marcus stared at that envelope like it might explode if he touched it. "I don't know if I can read this here, not in front of all these people," and his voice came out barely above a whisper, and Natalie nodded understanding completely. "You don't have to read it now, but I also need to tell you what she said out loud, what she made me memorize so I could say it to your face when I found you." And Marcus looked up at her, this stranger who'd cared for his wife in her final weeks, this woman who'd been carrying a message like some kind of emotional time capsule. "She made you memorize something?" And Natalie's eyes were already wet. "She said the letter was for later when you were alone, but the words were for the exact moment I tracked you down." Marcus braced himself, hands flat on the table like he was trying to keep the world from tilting sideways. "Okay, tell me. Tell me what she said." Natalie took a shaky breath, and her voice came out steady despite the tears starting to fall. She said, "Tell Marcus that I'm not gone. I'm in every sunrise he shows Iris, every house he builds with those strong hands, every moment he chooses joy over grief. Tell him that loving me doesn't mean stopping his life. It means living it fully because I can't anymore. Tell him 2 years is long enough to mourn, and it's time to let someone new make him smile." Marcus put his head in his hands right there at the table, and his shoulders started shaking. And he was crying in front of a cafe full of strangers, but he couldn't have stopped if his life depended on it. Natalie reached across the table and took his hand without thinking, pure nurse instinct kicking in. She also said, "Tell him Iris needs to see him happy, not just surviving. That little girl is watching everything and learning that grief is forever, and Amanda didn't want that." Marcus looked up with tears streaming down his face. How did she know? How did she know I'd still be stuck 2 years later? How did she know I'd be going through the motions like some kind of robot? Natalie's thumb rubbed circles on the back of his hand. "Because she knew you, Marcus. She said you'd bury yourself in work. You'd build beautiful homes for other families while your own house stayed frozen in time. You'd put Iris first and yourself never. And she wanted you to know that's not what she wanted for you." The waitress appeared with a whole box of tissues and 2 glasses of water without saying a word. Just set them down and walked away. And Marcus grabbed a handful of tissues and tried to pull himself together. "I haven't decorated for Christmas in 2 years, he said, and the confession came out like he was admitting to a crime. "Iris asks every year and I make excuses. Say we're too busy, say maybe next year, and she stopped asking because she knows the answer." Natalie squeezed his hand. "Amanda knew that too. That's why she picked Christmas week for me to find you. She said it was your favorite time of year before she got sick, and she wanted you to love it again." Marcus let out this broken laugh. "She thought of everything, didn't she? Planned this whole thing from a hospice bed." "She loved you so much," Natalie said, and her voice cracked. "Those last 6 weeks, all she talked about was you and Iris. How you met in college at some terrible party. How you proposed while you were both covered in paint from renovating your first apartment. How you cried harder than she did when Iris was born." Marcus felt more tears coming. "I can't believe you remember all that." And Natalie smiled through her own tears. "It's hard to forget. She made me promise I'd wait exactly 2 years because she said that's how long you'd need to grieve properly before you'd be ready to hear any of this. And she was very specific about Christmas week because she wanted you to have joy again during the holidays." Marcus's voice came out wrecked. "I don't know if I can do this. She's asking me to move on and I don't know how." Natalie pulled out her phone. "She knew you'd say that. She made me take a video. Do you want to see it, or is this already too much?" Marcus felt his heart pounding so hard it hurt. "There's a video?" And Natalie nodded. "Filmed it 3 days before she passed. Made me swear I wouldn't show you until I delivered the message first." Marcus wiped his face. "Okay, yeah, show me. I need to see her." Natalie pulled up the video on her phone and turned it so they could both see the screen. And there was Amanda in the hospice bed, looking thin but smiling that smile Marcus used to wake up to every morning. "Hi, baby," Amanda's voice came through the tiny speaker. "If you're watching this, it means Natalie found you, and it's been 2 years, and I'm hoping you're doing okay." Marcus made this sound like all the air had been punched out of his lungs, and Amanda kept talking. "I know you, Marcus Walsh. I know you're probably still wearing that ratty Cubs sweatshirt I tried to throw away like 6 times, still eating cereal for dinner, still working yourself to death on job sites because it's easier than dealing with feelings." Marcus was crying so hard he could barely see the screen, and Amanda's voice got softer. "But here's the thing, my love. I didn't marry you so you could stop living when I did. I married you because you built me a life I loved, literally and metaphorically. You built our home with your own hands and filled it with laughter, and Iris deserves to see that version of you, the one who smiles and jokes and makes terrible pancakes on Sunday mornings." Amanda's eyes were wet now too in the video. "So, I'm asking you 2 years later to try. Go on a date, decorate for Christmas, let yourself be happy without feeling guilty. And if Natalie's watching this with you, be nice to her. She's carried this message for 2 years because I asked her to, and she's pretty incredible." Amanda blew a kiss at the camera. "I love you forever, Marcus. Now go live for both of us." and the video ended. Marcus and Natalie were both sobbing at the table, and half the cafe was crying too. Some woman 3 tables over was openly weeping into her pasta, and the waitress brought over more tissues without being asked. They sat in silence for a few minutes, just trying to breathe. And finally Marcus said, "I'm sorry Rachel tricked you into this. This isn't fair to you. You're just trying to keep a promise, and I'm falling apart." Natalie shook her head. "Actually, I'm glad she tricked me. I've been trying to figure out how to reach you for months. I didn't know how to just show up at your door and say, 'Hey, your wife who passed 2 years ago left you a message.'" They talked for another hour about Amanda's final days, and Marcus asked questions he'd been too scared to ask anyone else. Was she in pain? Was she scared? Did she know how much he loved her? And Natalie answered everything with the honesty of someone who'd been there. She told him about her own story too, how she'd lost her mom to the same illness 5 years ago, how she became a hospice nurse to help families the way she wished someone had helped hers, how Amanda had reminded her that caregivers are people too who need to take care of themselves. Around 9 o'clock, Marcus looked at his phone and realized he'd been there for 2 hours. "I should go. Iris is with my brother, but I need to get home." And they both stood up awkwardly. In the parking lot, Marcus said, "Thank you for keeping your promise to her, for finding me, for all of this." And Natalie said, "Of course." And there was this moment where neither of them knew what to do next. "Rachel probably thought this would turn into something," Marcus said, and his voice was tight, like romantic or whatever. "But I'm not ready for that. I'm sorry." Natalie looked relieved. "I'm not either. 100. I wasn't looking for a date. I just wanted to deliver the message." And Marcus felt like he could breathe again. "Okay, good. So we're on the same page." They said awkward goodbyes and drove away in opposite directions. And Marcus sat in his truck in his own driveway for 20 minutes, just staring at that sealed letter before finally going inside. 3 days later, on December 23rd, Marcus still hadn't opened the letter. It was sitting on his nightstand, taunting him, and Iris came into his room that morning before school. "Daddy, what's that?" she asked, pointing at the envelope. And Marcus said, "Just a letter from Mommy. She wrote it a long time ago." And his voice came out thick. Iris climbed onto his bed. "Are you going to read it?" And Marcus said, "When I'm ready, baby." And Iris went quiet for a minute, then said in this small voice, "I miss her, but I also miss you. You're here, but you're not really here." Marcus felt like she'd just driven a nail straight through his heart. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" And Iris looked at him with eyes way too old for 7 years. "You don't smile anymore, Daddy. You don't do Christmas stuff. Mommy loved Christmas, and now we don't even have a tree." Marcus pulled his daughter into a hug and realized she was right. He'd been so focused on just surviving, he'd forgotten his kid was watching and learning that this is what life looks like after loss. He made a decision that was probably crazy, pulled out his phone and called Natalie, and when she answered sounding surprised, he just started talking. "I need help. I know this is weird, but I need to decorate for Christmas for Iris, and I can't do it alone. All Amanda's decorations are in storage, and I can't face them by myself, and I don't know why I'm calling you, but—" And Natalie cut him off. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. Text me your address." Natalie showed up at Marcus's house 20 minutes later in jeans and a sweatshirt, looking nothing like the composed nurse from the cafe. And Iris opened the door with eyes that went wide when she saw a stranger standing there. "Who are you?" Iris asked with all the suspicion a 7-year-old could muster. And Natalie knelt down to her level. "I'm Natalie. I'm a friend of your dad's. I'm here to help with Christmas decorations if that's okay with you." Iris's entire face transformed, like someone had flipped a light switch. "We're decorating? Really? Daddy said we could?" And Marcus appeared behind her, looking grateful and terrified in equal measure. "Yeah, baby, we're decorating. Natalie's going to help us because I can't do it alone." They drove to the storage unit in Marcus's truck with Iris chattering nonstop in the back seat about ornaments she remembered from when she was little. And when Marcus unlocked the unit and saw all those boxes labeled in Amanda's handwriting, his hands started shaking. "Christmas decorations. Handle with joy," one box said, and Marcus just stood there staring at it until Natalie touched his arm gently. "We can do this, one box at a time, and if it gets too hard, we stop, okay?" Marcus nodded and grabbed the first box, and they loaded up the truck bed with what felt like his entire past packed in cardboard. Back at the house, they spent the next 3 hours transforming the place, and Natalie strung lights along the porch railing while Marcus held the ladder steady, and Iris directed the whole operation like a tiny general. That wreath goes on the door, the snowman goes in the front yard. Mommy always put the star on top last, and her voice was so full of excitement that Marcus felt his chest get tight watching her. They found Amanda's old Christmas playlist on a dusty iPod and played it through the speakers, and for the first time in 2 years, Marcus's house felt alive instead of like a museum dedicated to grief. Iris fell asleep on the couch around 9 p.m., surrounded by empty boxes and tissue paper, and Marcus covered her with a blanket while Natalie made them both coffee in the kitchen. They sat on the floor by the Christmas tree they'd just decorated, exhausted but something close to content, and Marcus said quietly, "Thank you for coming. I couldn't have done this without you." Natalie leaned her head back against the couch. "You could have. You just needed someone to take the first step with you. And honestly, it helped me too. I haven't decorated for Christmas in 3 years since my mom passed." Marcus looked at her, really looked, and saw the same exhaustion and grief he carried every day. "Rachel didn't just trick me, did she? She tricked you too, into dealing with your own stuff." Natalie laughed softly. "She's smarter than both of us combined, apparently. I've been so busy taking care of everyone else, I forgot I'm allowed to have a life too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the tree lights blink, and then Marcus pulled the letter out of his pocket. "I've been carrying this around since you gave it to me. I keep almost reading it, then losing my nerve. But I think I need to do it now, and I think I need you here when I do." Natalie sat up straighter. "Are you sure? This is really personal, Marcus." But he was already opening the envelope with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He read silently at first, and Natalie watched his face go through about 17 emotions in 30 seconds. And then he started reading out loud in a voice that kept breaking. "My dearest Marcus, if you're reading this, it's been 2 years, and I'm hoping you've started to heal. I'm hoping Iris has your smile and your terrible sense of humor. I'm hoping you're still building beautiful homes with those strong hands that I love so much." Marcus had to stop and wipe his eyes before he could keep going. "But I'm also guessing you're still scared. Scared to move on. Scared that loving someone new means forgetting me. So let me be crystal clear. It doesn't. I want you to fall in love again. I want Iris to see you happy with someone who makes you laugh. I want you to have more love in your life, not less." Natalie was crying now too, and Marcus kept reading. "You once told me that love isn't finite, that loving me didn't mean you loved your family less. It meant your heart grew. Remember that. Your heart can grow again. I handpicked Natalie for this because in those final weeks I saw her heart. She's been hurt too. She gives everything to everyone else. She needs someone to see her for once." Marcus looked up at Natalie, who had her hand over her mouth. "She was talking about you. She wanted us to meet. She planned this 2 years ago." Natalie was full on sobbing. "She was pretty incredible." And Marcus nodded. "She really was. And she was also apparently a matchmaker from beyond the grave." And they both laughed through their tears. Marcus finished reading the letter out loud. "All I ask is this. Don't waste the life you have left honoring the life we shared. Live, Marcus. Decorate for Christmas. Go on dates. Marry again if you find the right person. Give Iris a full life, not a memorial. I love you forever, but you have to let me go enough to let someone else in." They sat there on the floor for a long time, just breathing, and finally Marcus said, "I'm terrified of this, of feeling something for someone who isn't her." And Natalie said, "Me too. I've built my whole life around not needing anyone, around being the helper, never the one who needs help." Marcus turned to face her. "What if we just try, like friends first, no pressure, no expectations, just two people who understand grief trying to figure out how to be happy again?" Natalie smiled through her tears. "I'd really like that." 6 months later, Marcus was finishing up a kitchen renovation when his phone rang, and it was Natalie asking if he wanted to grab lunch, and his crew noticed how his whole face changed when he answered. You got it bad, boss, Danny said with a grin. And Marcus didn't even deny it because, yeah, he did. He'd spent the last 6 months slowly, carefully falling in love with someone who understood his past and didn't need him to be over it. They'd been taking it slow, coffee dates and walks and family dinners with Iris, who adored Natalie. And somewhere between February and June, Marcus had realized he was actually happy for the first time in years. At lunch, Natalie reached across the table and took his hand. I need to tell you something, and I'm nervous about it. And Marcus's heart started pounding. Okay, what's wrong? Natalie shook her head. Nothing's wrong. It's just, I think I'm falling in love with you, and I needed to say it out loud before I lost my nerve. Marcus felt his eyes get wet. I think I've been in love with you since you showed up at my house to help me decorate. I was just too scared to say it. But Natalie, I love you, and it doesn't feel like betraying Amanda. It feels like honoring her because she wanted this. 1 year after that first cafe meeting, Marcus asked Natalie to meet him at Lakeside Cafe, and she showed up confused because they didn't usually go there. Why here? She asked as they walked to the same corner booth where everything started, and Marcus slid into the seat across from her, just like that first night. Because this is where you delivered Amanda's message, where you cracked me open and reminded me how to live, and I need to ask you something here, where it all began. And he got down on one knee right there in the booth. Natalie Chen, you saw me at my absolute lowest and didn't run. You helped me rebuild my life brick by brick. You love my daughter like she's your own. Will you marry me? Natalie was crying before he even finished. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I can't imagine my life without you two in it. The whole cafe erupted in applause, and the same waitress from a year ago came running over. I was here that night you both cried. I knew you'd end up together. They got married in the spring at a small outdoor ceremony with just family and close friends. And Iris took her job as flower girl so seriously she had a checklist. Marcus's vows were, Amanda taught me that love multiplies, it doesn't divide. Loving you doesn't mean I loved her less. It means my heart grew just like she said it would. Thank you for being patient while I figured that out. And Natalie's were, you taught me that caregivers need care too, that it's okay to let someone see my heart. Amanda left me a gift when she asked me to find you. She gave me a family I didn't know I needed. During the reception, Iris pulled Natalie aside with her serious face on. Are you my mom now? And Natalie knelt down carefully. I'm your Natalie. Your Amanda will always be your mom, and I would never try to replace her, but I'll always be here too. Is that okay with you? Iris thought about it for exactly 3 seconds, then threw her arms around Natalie's neck. That's perfect. Mommy would really like you. The next Christmas, they were all in Marcus and Natalie's house decorating together, and there were photos of Amanda on the mantle right next to their wedding pictures, because you don't erase the past, you honor it while building the future. Iris was teaching Natalie her mom's hot chocolate recipe, and Marcus was attempting to hang lights without Natalie's help and failing spectacularly. And when Natalie walked over to steady the ladder, he looked down at her and said, Thank you for carrying that message, for seeing me when I was invisible. She squeezed his ankle. Thank you for letting me in, for teaching me that my heart could grow too. Sometimes being tricked is the best thing that ever happens to you. Marcus thought he was meeting a donor and walked into a setup that would save his life. Natalie carried a message for 2 years from a dying woman and delivered it to a broken man and ended up healing her own heart in the process. This story is for everyone stuck in grief, thinking they don't deserve happiness, for everyone who needs permission to move forward, for everyone learning that loving again doesn't erase who you lost, it honors them by choosing to keep living. Amanda gave Marcus that permission from a hospice bed, and he took it, and his life grew because of it. If this reminded you that hearts can heal and love, multiplies, and second chances are real, hit subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear. It's okay to be happy again. Thanks for being here with us. And remember, the people we lose want us to live fully, not just survive.